Yay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Teresa Scandifio. I'm Director of Adult Learning here at TIFF. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to tonight's In Conversation with Catherine Hardwicke. We are incredibly thrilled for tonight, and I'll stick to the script so you have time for questions. This event is co-presented with Film Fatale, a network of women filmmakers here in Toronto who meet regularly to share resources, collaborate on projects, and build a supportive community in which to make films. Before we bring two of the founders of Film Fatale on stage, I'd first like to thank, on behalf of TIFF, some of the folks who support us on our ongoing basis. Our lead sponsor, Bell, our major sponsors, RBC, L'Oréal Paris, and Visa, and our major public supporters, the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario, the Ontario Arts Council, and the City of Toronto. And of course, we absolutely appreciate and thank donors and members like you for supporting TIFF's mission 365 days a year. A few reminders. We ask that you please put your phones on silent. Taking photos or recording video is not allowed at any point during the event, but we would love for you to be tweeting ICW Hardwicke. During the audience Q&A, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions of our guest of honor. Please take that opportunity, but when you do, wait for the microphone to get to you so that we can record and so everyone can hear your brilliant question, not a statement. So I'll return in a moment to introduce our guest of honor, but please join me in welcoming Chloe Sosa-Sims and Sarah Goodman of Film Fatale.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for coming tonight. So I'm Chloe Sosa-Sims, and I'm the co-head and co-founder of Film Fatale's Toronto. And this is Sarah Goodman, who's one of our very active members and, of course, a filmmaker. So thank you so much for being here. We're so proud to be involved in this In Conversation tonight and being an official co-presenter. The conversation is very important. I think Catherine Hardwicke is an incredible filmmaker, and it's so important for female filmmakers to have influences who are available. We want to thank TIFF for being so supportive to Film Fatale's Toronto, and I'm going to throw it to Sarah, who's going to talk a little bit about our history.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see so many people here. A filmmaker named Leah Meyerhoff started Film Fatales in New York City in 2013. She was on the cusp of making her first feature, and she was looking around for support, and she didn't really see an organization that was what she was looking for, so she created the Film Fatales, a support network for women who started meeting once a month to mentor each other and collaborate and share resources. And so I met Leah at a film festival where we both had films at the very end of 2013, and I had actually already read about Film Fatales because they were starting to get press across the United States, and so I was really excited to meet her, and then she told me that really wonderful news that there was a Toronto chapter starting, which I hadn't heard about, and she told me about Chloe and Nicolina, who are the co-founding members of our Toronto chapter.
Yeah, so today the main chapter is still based in New York, and despite being entirely volunteer-run, they have incredible initiatives and opportunities for our members. For example, they've developed relationships with film festivals across the world, and they work with them tirelessly to try and get more films directed by women on screens. We also, in the local Toronto chapter, run by myself, Nicolina, we organize events and workshops and initiatives and opportunities for our members. So alongside our monthly meetings, which are really incredible in each other's homes where we provide support and guidance, we also have some new initiatives coming up we're really excited about. So we're going to be present and involved in TIFF this year, which we're really excited about. And then further to that, we just actually launched a diversity committee. So we're really trying to bring in more underrepresented voices into our group because we feel that's very important. So that's it. I know you probably want to hear Catherine, so thanks so much, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Chloe and Sarah. And thank you all for being here tonight. It is truly a special moment for us at TIFF. And now the guest of honor. Catherine is an award-winning director and production designer. She holds a Bachelor of Architecture degree from UT Austin and studied animation at the UCLA Film School. She worked as a production designer on over 20 films, collaborating with directors like Richard Linklater, David O. Russell, Cameron Crowe, Lisa Cholodenko. Her first feature film, 13, won awards at numerous film festivals, including the Directing Award at Sundance. Catherine's subsequent credits include Lords of Dogtown, Twilight, which set a record as the highest grossing film by a female director, Red Riding Hood, Plush, and Miss You Already, which screened at TIFF in 2015. This year, Hardwicke directed the music video for Lady Gaga's Till It Happens to You, which garnered international attention for shedding light on campus sexual assaults. We at TIFF believe that film is a powerful tool. It has the ability to start conversations that can enact change, and it has the power to transform the way people see the world. Tonight, we're honored to celebrate and profile Catherine Hardwicke, a powerful creative voice with a diverse and extensive body of work. As a writer crafting compelling stories, as a production designer visualizing moods and palettes for each set, and as a forceful producer and director championing stories that she's determined to deliver to the screen. Catherine has demonstrated time and time again film's beauty as an art form. Her record-breaking box office totals and her advocacy for discovering new talent reflect a dynamic engagement with film as an industry, and her unwavering calls to action for us to deal with gender inequity and sexual violence on campus is an inspiration for how the moving image can be a powerful tool to mobilize change. Tonight, we have a powerhouse film leader amongst us, and we're thrilled to have her here. So please join me in welcoming our guest of honor, Catherine Hardwicke.
Hey. Do I go here? Okay. I go here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi.
Keep coming. So for those of you new to the In Conversation with formats, our esteemed guest and I will talk and go over some clips, but she has such an expansive career, 30+ titles, so we can't possibly cover it all up here. So we're going to need you during the Q&A with the audience to fill in some of those gaps and help us. So we have a lot to cover. I think we should just jump right in.
Okay.
You started your career studying architecture. You can giggle through it. It's all good. You started your career in architecture.
Yes, I went to University of Texas School of Architecture, 5-year professional degree, which I loved architecture a lot.
And how did you make that leap from architecture to production design?
As an art, I was working as an architect, and I was excited about, always designing new buildings and everything, and then new designs and something really creative. And then I found out that architecture didn't really want you to be that creative. There were like so many building codes and and so many rules and regulations and money and all this stuff that creativity wasn't like the #1 thing they were looking for. So I thought, well, maybe there's another field, that encourages creativity. And I was just so naive that I thought the film business encouraged creativity. I'm like, wow, I should go to film school. I bet they want just cool projects, new, original ideas every day. I didn't know about sequels or whatever. Tentpole stuff, I wasn't thinking. So I went to UCLA Film School, grad school in film, and I was doing like animated films, made a little short animated film. And then I didn't realize, that it took like giant factories to make animated films.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have any money, and suddenly people said, hey, you're trained as an architect, maybe you could production design my film. So I started, production designing films, which was so fun. It was like just a blast. I did a crazy skateboard movie and a Roger Corman movie, and I just loved it, and then kind of clawed my way up to get to work on a little bit bigger budget movies that weren't like, here's 5 cents, go paint a skateboard ramp. I just totally clawed my way up to bigger budget projects. Yeah.
So how did you use your architectural training in production design?
Well, as an architect, you have to have structural visualization. Like, you could look at an empty field and think, I could build a village here, like on Three Kings. We had to build all the Iraqi villages in the middle of nowhere. Actually, we built it in a copper mine in Arizona. So, I had to go stand there with David and say, I know it just looks like a pile of sand, but I'm going to make something here and here. And, I would dance around and show him how I was going to make it, So it was kind of a direct translation, starting from nothing, either a script that just has like letters on a page. How can I make this into something exciting and dynamic?
That's very cool. I love you. It's like hard to stay focused. It's like mesmerizing. So you have over 20 plus credits in production design, and we didn't know how to even start. We had a bit of a cage match trying to pick which clip, and we landed on Three Kings. So let's set up the clip for the audience so we can watch it as kind of a launching pad of you talking about some of your creative process. So the clip, it's early on in the film. There's 4 US soldiers in Iraq who have just begun their journey to find gold stolen from Kuwait. So if we could roll the clip from Three Kings. It'll be here.
Round, round, get around, I get around, yeah, get around, round, round, I get around, I get around, round, round, I get around.
Going fast, leave the safeties on. It was the blinding power of American sunshine.
Driving up and down the same old strip. I gotta find a new place where the kids are hip. My buddies and me, you're getting real well known. Yeah, the bad guys know us and they leave us alone. I get around.
Wait, bunker!
I get
There.
around.
Go, go! Orders from the United States of America. Orders from the President of the United States of America. I'm sorry. On the ground right now. America. We are the Army of the United States of America.
Wow, I haven't seen that in a while.
It's intense. It's intense. So how did you work on, you know, the color and palette inspiration for this film?
Well, this was made in, I think, '99, right? And at that time, we didn't have very many images of Iraq, and we hadn't done the second, we hadn't invaded, and so so we couldn't. Gee, the bush, okay, whatever, okay, focus. Okay, so it was hard to get photos of Iraq, and we found various Iraq refugees that had some scrapbooks of what these villages and what their homes look like, and I would get the scrapbook photos, and then I would, like, it'd be Mom and Dad smiling, and then I'd look in the background, what was that texture on that wall, and those are palm trees and all this, so we had to do our research. It was tough, and I wasn't able to go to the Middle East or go visit Iraq at that time, and we had to film it. George Clooney was still working on that TV show ER, so he was working 4 days a week, and we got him 3 days a week. So they said, you have to figure out a way to build Iraq 1 hour plane ride away from LA. And I'm like, whoa, okay. And I had done this movie called Tank Girl. I don't know if any of you guys ever heard of it. And we shot in an abandoned copper mine, and I thought, well, that is like complete devastation of the landscape. A copper mine, the arsenic, it just ruins everything. So it looked kind of like the desert in Iraq. And so that's why we went, I said, let's go look at these copper mines. And then, you know, the palette, just looking at whatever photos you could find of that part of the world, you know, with the sand and elements were built out of the sand, you know, the plaster was mixed with sand, so you found this beautiful like desert color. And then what I did find in the photos were, you know, things that we see in a lot of countries around the world where things are half-built. So like I love that idea, you know, of the half-built building and the money ran out, or like the crumbling details. Everything that you saw in that thing, we had to build from scratch. So even the palm trees, we had to make the palm trees because no palm trees would live out there, you know. So it was all, you know, just like trying to get a real sense of texture and reality, and looking at all the murals. I just remember that too, of Saddam Hussein. And then we got the murals, and we saw from photographs that there was a lot of graffiti, that people would trash the murals. So I asked some of those refugees to come out and be the ones that would actually deface the murals themselves to have it more authentic. And it was fascinating because as soon they were here, they escaped, they were in the US. As soon as they saw these big murals of Saddam Hussein, they went crazy and started throwing bricks at, and I literally had to pull, no, don't ruin the whole thing. Don't tear the whole thing down. They were just going nuts, you know. I was like, calm down. You know, it only partly defaced, you know. So we try always to make it, you know, like super authentic, real, find real people to help on the sets, real, you know, the actors, if it's somebody's bedroom, I would try to have them come hang out in the bedroom and actually live there for a while and rearrange the furniture and make it feel real, you know.
And do you feel that as a whole, that's the role of the production designer?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to create a very grounded sense of reality so that when you're an actor, you can walk into a place and then you understand about your character on a whole other level, you know, of detail, because we'll find detail, like every single choice that you make as a production designer hopefully means something. You know, where did she get, why is there a watch here? Where did she get that watch? I think this is something interesting, like when you're an architect, you're trying to make everything like fabulous and form follows function and super modern and really great looking, right? And then suddenly I switched from architecture to production design, and I was not trying to make everything sleek and fantastic like this building. I was trying to add character to things. I like a funky old dirty shag rug. That was cool because that might show the history of the person. Whereas before, as an architect, get that shag rug out of there. You're not allowed to put any, you know, ugly looking furniture in my building, you know. But then you start loving those details. Like every house I go to, still, I go to anybody's house, I'm going to be looking. Where do they keep their keys, or what little stashes do they have in the corner? I'm always like snooping around, looking in the closets, you know, all those little personal details that make it real. You know? So don't invite me to your house. I'll be like taking pictures. Hey.
So you already mentioned, you know, the shag carpet or the rooms, you know, thinking about in 2003, you shifted again or broadened again your exploration in your career, adding from production designer to writer and director with the film 13. And, you know, how did that project come about?
Well, between every job as a production designer, I would be taking like a directing class. I would be going to a thing just like this, taking notes, everything that the person said. I would take a writing workshop. I would take acting classes, like 5 years of acting classes, so that I could get to direct my own film. And I wrote several other screenplays. I thought they were going to get made. I made storyboards. I made short films. I had a Civil War tent in my living room. You know, everything that I built. Yeah, I had a Civil War movie, you know, and I built a tent in the living room and shot scenes there. I mean, I was just all in, you know, like, I'm going to make this happen. And I couldn't get any of those movies to happen. And finally, I was like, oh my God. Every day I was like, well, I've got to write a cheaper movie. The Civil War one was going to cost $9 million. No one would give me the money. Then I wrote a $5 million. Then I'm just like, how cheap can I write the film, you know? It's like, what's the lowest I can make it for? And this was a little bit kind of before digital cameras too. So finally, or to the high-end nice ones that we have now. So I think then so I'm struggling, I've got to make my film, you know. And suddenly, my friend, Nikki Reed, who was 13 years old at the time, started going through this very tough situation. Just, you know, she was obsessed with the beauty culture. She was waking up at 4:30 every morning to do 2.5 hours of hair and makeup before she went to 7th grade. I was like, wow, okay. What's going on with her that she's so obsessed with this and this is so important to her? And she was going into some self-destructive behavior, and she hated her mom, she hated her dad, she hated her brother, she hated everybody. She didn't hate me because I wasn't in her family, you know, like I was kind of like the weird aunt or whatever. So I was still okay. And I just started trying to, could I be helpful? Could I be a positive influence on this kid, you know? And so I tried to teach her to surf, and let's go to museums and draw. She goes, those are the kind of things you like to do, but I want to be an actor. And I was like, oh my God, that's just going to make it worse, you know? Then you're going to get more obsessed with your look and more self-conscious. But, you know, if somebody has a dream, you can't say to that person, no, that's a bad dream, or don't do what you want to do, what you want to pursue in life. I thought I have to think of a way to help her pursue what she wants to do. So I'll take her to acting classes. We'll read, this is 7th grade, we'll read Uta Hagen, we'll read the Meisner technique. You know, we'll learn about the moment before. And she seemed to really be getting into it, you know, and understanding all these things. But you take a 7th grader to an acting class with adults, and the scenes are like sex scenes and all this. I'm like, oh, this isn't going to work. And then I thought, okay, also if you're an actor, you're kind of at the mercy of somebody else, you know, offering you a part, or you're not right for the part. Whereas if you're Woody Allen or other people, that they take control of their career and they write their own parts for themselves. So I said, Nikki, let's write a screenplay that you can star in and you can be in it. And let's write a teen comedy. You know, that's what I thought it was going to be. If you've seen 13, it's not that hilarious.
And it was the experience that, you know, similar to you talking about having first-person experience, having a lived-in space in production design, that was the kind of grounding principle with the writing, the first-person perspective of what she was going through.
Exactly.
And fueled it.
Yes.
Maybe we could watch a clip from 13 and then talk about it. To set it up, it's near the end of the film. It's a scene where Tracy's mom, or the mother of Tracy, a fiery teenager, is asking her what's under her shirt, and Tracy reacts with her gleeful sidekick watching it occur. We'll roll the clip and talk about this would-be comedy.
Yeah.
You know what, I should be getting back to work. I mean, I could be selling houses right now.
10:30, Mwah. Cynthia can handle it, Mom. Ooh! You want me to model my new thong? It's perfect for pooping on the go.
What's that on your shirt?
I need business.
What is that?
Don't worry about it.
Let me see that.
No, Mom! What is it with you and poking
I
me?
just wanna see what you
Mom,
got there.
stop!
What the hell is that? I'm talking to you.
It's a belly.
Speak up, I can't hear you.
It's a belly button ring! How else can I say it? I don't speak no other languages. Oh, and you wanna know what that is? That is a tongue ring.
What did you do all this, baby?
Oh, Mom. 2,000 years ago, I'm a mummy. I was born 2,000 years ago. What?
Tracy. I'm really starting to lose it. Stop it, please.
No bra, no panties. No bra, no panties.
Stop it.
No bra, no panties.
It's an incredible film. If you have not seen it, you need to watch 13. It's an incredible film. You talked about starting off as a comedy, then talking to Nikki Reed, who is the other actress in the film. You have proven time and time again with 13, Lords of Dogtown, even Twilight, that you work with young actors, you collaborate with them on writing, you see them as equals, and get unknown performers in these films. Why is it so important to you to harness this talent?
Well, Nikki's story was just so real, and the pain that she was going through, and what her mother was going through and her family was going through. And I felt like I wanted to tell that story in an authentic way. As we started talking about, you know, let's make funny scenes, I said, well, it's got to be grounded and real, what you would really talk about at junior high or with your friends. And then we just realized it wasn't a comedy. It was real stuff that she was going through, and peer pressure, whatever, all kinds of things, you know, being this very beautiful kid that suddenly got all this attention that she wasn't really able to handle. So I think that, you know, I made a promise with Nikki. I said, okay, if you and I write this together, then I'll direct it and you'll star in it. And we shook hands on it. And so I had to live up to that promise, you know, though she did not end up playing herself. Evan Rachel Wood played Nikki, and Nikki played the kind of bad influence girl. And that was very traumatic too, because that was a promise we made. Of course, no one ever thought the movie would get made. You know, it was my first movie, and you know, it was like a joke almost if we were really going to make it. But she actually, after several, you know, auditions, we realized that Nikki wasn't really innocent enough to play herself anymore, the innocent version of herself. So, and Evan Rachel Wood could do that, and so Nikki had to play the kind of bad girl.
Well, and you know, this is her first collaboration, your first feature, and all the success.
She'd never had acted before.
Yeah, that's and it's amazing to watch, even, you know, as we start talking about Twilight, how you're able to, with these huge productions, champion unknown actors in a system that, you know, you're talking about stomping creativity.
Yeah.
There's certain formulas, and often it's the performers. I wanted to ask you how you figured out and matched the visual style or styles for 13.
Well, one thing, I would go over to Nikki's house and with her mom, because her mom was a friend of mine, her mom cut my hair and everything, and I would see this war going on, like the mother, just kind of like what you saw. I'd see her hating her mom, and the mom not knowing how to deal with it, and the brother coming in, and you know, I just was kind of in shock, and I would be trying to kind of film it just for research. And then I realized it was kind of like war photography. Like, oh my God, this blew up over here. Now I had to chase that one into the other room. And then I thought, that's how I should film the movie, as like a war film in a way, you know, where you don't know where the next explosion is going to go off. And so that made, and also Nikki was very kinetic. Like, even in the writing process, at one moment we'd be having a very emotional moment, because we wrote everything standing up and talking. And we acted out every scene. So Nikki played herself, and then I played her mother, her boyfriend, her sister, you know, her brother, her best friend. I played all the other parts. And she would be very intense with me, very vulnerable, and then the phone would ring with her real boyfriend be on the phone, and she'd start jumping up, the tears would like go back inside. She'd be dancing, and then he'd say something that she didn't like. She'd be yelling and throwing down the phone and screaming. All that would happen in like 30 seconds. So I thought, this cannot be a static film. Her energy is wild, and I basically did it handheld. Another reason, we had no money. We didn't have money for a dolly or anything. We didn't even have a tripod except for 2 shots. You know, so it worked with the style and the energy that I was trying to convey, and the budget.
It's amazing. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that part about the war photography, but it adds a totally different dimension, because it is. And also this idea of a lot of the films about teenage girls being, you know, misty-eyed and woeful over boys. But I don't know about you, but, you know, a lot of people I knew and a lot of my experiences in my teen years, it's like teen girls can be really aggressive and assertive and have a lot of emotion and action. So this idea of like a docile, it was really powerful when I first watched this film. It was like, oh yeah, it's not someone like lying on the bed with their feet up, like, you know, writing hearts about some guy, you know?
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a bit to talk about Twilight.
Okay.
A major gig. It's an award-winning, best-selling book by Stephanie Meyer, being adapted to the screen, has a cult following. It's a major project. Let's talk about the opportunity. How did you leverage to get your foot in the door to be the director?
Well, you know what's kind of interesting is, at the time, this was not perceived as an opportunity or a big film, and even the cult following, people thought it was just a few girls. I was told this might be just 400 girls in Salt Lake City that are blogging about it every time I went to ask for more money. So it wasn't a coveted project at the time. In fact, it was Paramount had bought the rights to the book, and they had put it in turnaround. Do you guys know what that means? It means that they decide, we don't want to make it, this can't make any profit. So they give it back to the producers and say, we're turning this project around, we're not doing it. Then the producers took it to every other studio, Fox, everywhere, and they all said, we don't want to make this movie. So finally, no, this won't make any money, a girl star. So it wasn't a coveted project. In fact, so I'm on the jury at Sundance in 2007, and upstart company called Summit Entertainment, who has done a lot of foreign sales. They wanted to start producing films, and they liked 13. They handed me a stack of 5 scripts. And they said, see, we're trying to get into the business of making our own movies. See if you can respond to any of these. I read every one of them, threw them all away. I didn't really like any of the scripts. And then the next day I thought, what was that, Twilight? Oh, yeah, there's something good about it. I found out it was a book because it was starting to get, known online. I read the book, and so I went into the meeting at Summit, and I said, the script should be thrown away. It's terrible. They had Bella, the CIA, were tracking vampires. She was on a jet ski, everything. That was like, what?
Just picturing Kristen Stewart on a jet ski.
Yeah, it was nothing like the books, and I was like, they were trying to Hollywoodize it. I was like, no, no, no. Throw that script away, and then let's make it more closer to the book. And then I brought in all these pictures, like, how cool. I've seen vampires in like Paris and dark alleys, but I've never seen them out in the woods, beautiful moss. Like, I love moss, okay? And greenery and everything. I'm like, I want to see like pale vampires in moss, and they're like, okay. And I said, like, this will be cool and it'll be something special. But the main thing that I felt about the books, I thought, they had not even read the books, by the way. I don't even know if they knew it was a book at the time. But the producers, they just, wondered. Anyway, they were excited about it as I started getting excited about it. And I also thought what was cool that Stephanie had created this feeling of just being madly in love. Like, I felt it was just like intoxicating to read the book. Like you felt the first time you fell in love, right? Did anybody else feel that way? Did anybody read the book? And so I thought, I wonder if I can create that on film, where you're just like, you're getting giddy and dizzy. That would be a good challenge. And so, I said, I want to do it. Then they didn't even have the rights to it at the time. When I got excited, they went and got the rights, and we talked to Stephanie and said, we want to get the jet skis out and make it more like the book. And then she said, okay, and then we went forward from there. But the whole time it was like, kind of like making an indie movie more. It wasn't a big budget. There wasn't a high expectation. They did not think it was going to make a lot of money. Even the weekend before it opened, they told me, well, it's tracking pretty well. If it makes like 30 million, we're going to be just mind blown. Well, it made 69 million opening weekend. And then they told me, well, everybody that wanted to see it saw it opening weekend, so it's not going to make another dime. Cut to 400 million worldwide plus, billions after that. Yeah. So it was a surprise.
Wow. That's
but
crazy.
Now we have Hunger Games and Divergent and, lots of other things. So now it just seems like, duh, but that wasn't the case at the time.
So I think we should watch a clip of Moss and Dizzying Love. If you could please cue the clip from Twilight with Bella and Edward.
You're impossibly fast and strong. Your skin is pale white and ice cold. Your eyes change color. And sometimes you speak like you're from a different time. You never eat or drink anything. You don't go out in the sunlight. How old are you?
17.
How long have you been 17?
A while.
I know what you are.
Say it. Out loud. Say it.
Vampire.
Are you afraid?
No.
then ask me the most basic question. What do we eat?
You won't hurt me.
Oh, so young, Robin.
So the moss, the dizzying love in the camera, you know, one of your grounding principles seems to also return to this color palette. Was it a painting or a photograph? What was the inspiration for the hues, right? Because like no one's kind of bopping along in like an orange jumpsuit or anything.
Right.
It's very, very...
Exactly. I mean, I know it's on the other side of your country, but Vancouver is beautiful. Are we allowed to say that in Toronto?
Of course, yeah. Right? One country, one love.
So Vancouver is beautiful. I had worked on films there, and you know, I love to go every day off. I just go hiking in the forest, and I took a lot in the woods, and I took a lot of photographs, and also Oregon where we shot. So I looked at my own photographs that had that beautiful, moody feeling, and I took those in on the first meeting, and other better photographers than me, you know, foggy, beautiful things, and I just thought, this is the feeling that I want, you know, and that it needs to be, you know, this foggy, mysterious, great thing, because if the sun does shine on Robert Pattinson, then he has to sparkle, and that costs a lot of money with CGI. So we had to try to keep it very foggy, you know, all the time. But so I think, and then we did make a palette, you know. We thought that the Cullens would be, all their clothes would be the color of Arctic wolves, you know, either silvers, blues, grays, blacks, whites. And then Bella would be a little bit more earthy, and as she started falling more and more in love with him, she would start taking the same colors as they did. So she started to have like the blue jacket and everything, and kind of getting the Cullens color scheme. So we had a very strict palette, you know, published, costume designer, prop person knew it, locations, everybody knew it, you know.
And it seemed to be that kind of transition and grounding for Red Riding Hood as well.
Right, yeah.
It was beautiful, beautiful film.
Yeah, thank you, yeah. Well, we had the red, some red would pop.
The
only
big
the red,
cape.
only the red cape. Yeah, so that's kind of fun. I mean, coming from art and architecture background, you know, colors are so important. And if you pick sometimes I do that, exactly what you said, pick a beautiful painting that I just love and say, if the color is not on this painting and in the same proportion that's in the painting, then it's not allowed on the set. And then everybody has that painting and they know, you know.
It's very cool. We're jumping ahead to Miss You Already, a film that was screened last year in the festival.
Yay.
And
yay, TIFF.
No, this is about you. This is 100% about you.
Okay.
This film, it's an incredibly brave story. It's about two friends, one of whom is going through fertility issues, the other one's going through cancer. It's brave in part because you reject this idea of the cancer hero or the martyr. Millie is a rock and roll force of nature who's flawed before and during her downturn of the illness. And for anyone who's watched someone they love lose the battle to cancer, it's beautiful, but it's painfully accurate in the portrayal of these moments. It's, you know, you're laughing or you're bickering or you're resentful and everything in between. And it's a really powerful performance of Drew Barrymore and Toni Collette, and an incredibly well-structured film and paced on your part. I also think it's brave in the evasion of sentimentality. Was there any pressure from the funders to do melodrama, women's weepy, this is a female-directed, female cast, there should be tears?
No, they knew that, you know, when I accepted the project, I said all the tears and all the crying is going to be removed from the script, because if people are crying, if you see somebody crying on screen, it's hard. You don't really want to cry. We don't really want to see people crying on screen. We want to see somebody maybe trying to be brave and trying not to cry. So we tried to cut all that out, you know, but it wasn't that possible because the scenes were very intense and the actors cried almost every time when we did certain heavy scenes. And so I'd say, okay, let it out, cry it out. Now we're going to do one without the tears, you know, so that it can be, otherwise you could have a movie that people were crying like the whole movie. That would be pretty hard to watch, don't you guys think? Yeah.
But it is powerful because the characters aren't crying. It's like this safety valve that doesn't get released on screen, and it's bottled inside you as the viewer. It's incredibly effective.
Right. At TIFF, at the screening, people were, when I've seen it with people, it is emotional because most people have something like this in their life. You have one person that you love or a relative that's going through something difficult or has gone through something difficult. So I think you put yourself into it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in a very short period of time, we started with your first film and talking about your most recent. What do you know now that you didn't know when you started your would-be Civil War / comedy?
Well, I didn't know how hard it was going to be. Like, even after you make a film and if it wins an award at Sundance or if it makes whatever, you know, $400 million, I didn't know how hard it was to get the next one made. I thought that it would be like a little bit easier to get the next one, but people are very cautious, of course, when they're spending a large amount of money, and even if they finance a film for $5 million, to get it out in the marketplace, you might have to spend $30 million. Like our film that I love, you know, Miss You Already, they didn't have a budget to put it out there in the world, so barely anyone saw it because it wasn't advertised or anything. So, you know, I just didn't realize the economics and how difficult it was to get films made.
And in part, or mostly, because you're a woman, right? Like, you've been very vocal in talking about, even though you shouldered, you know, Twilight, even though you've had major successes and are incredibly experienced, that post-Twilight you weren't being offered the same jobs. You know, when did you start to realize the gender inequity and figuring out how to navigate it?
I think I mostly realized it after Twilight, because before that I had directed 3 movies and they were all, you know, had good things about them, but they didn't make a ton of money. So I thought, okay, that makes sense. People don't want to give me a lot of money because I haven't had like a big box office track record. But after Twilight, it did make a ton of money, and it was still difficult to get movies made. And then smart, awesome people like Gina Davis and other institutes started realizing, shining a light on our gender issue, diversity issue, and saying there are only, you know, 4% of the movies that are released, top box office movies every year, directed by women. There's only these small numbers. And, you know, I started realizing, wow, that's true. I used to think it was just me. I'm not smart enough. I'm not clever enough. I can't figure out the way to, you know, get into this game better. But then I saw that there is more of an unconscious and a conscious gender bias. And I literally, right after Twilight, I read this really cool script. I'm like, this is great. I'd love to make this movie. Oh, they don't even want to meet with you about it. They don't want to hear your pitch or your lookbook or any of your ideas about it because they want a guy to direct it. I was like, wow, they just blatantly said that. It was a family drama and a guy has to direct it. I'm like, okay. And then I started realizing more and more. Sometimes people will say that right up front to your agent, and sometimes it's just, you know, buried and you find it out 3 years later when the New York Times does an article recently. I found out some stuff. People that were saying, you know, we didn't want Catherine to do it because she couldn't do this. I found out stuff 3 years later, people talking shit about me. I'm like, whoa, okay. To a New York Times reporter. Like crazy things that weren't even true, but very gender biased things.
So when did you start spending such a significant amount of time doing like the workshops in Women in Film or the Sundance Institute or countless other action-based organizations that are trying to eradicate gender inequity in the film industry?
Well, I think also another turning point was reading the book Lean In. Has everybody here read that book? Who has? Admit it. Okay. You know, that made me realize that it's also in other businesses and other professions are the same thing. You can be labeled emotional or other code words for female, you know, and it wasn't just in our profession, so that it is kind of a whole worldwide systemic problem. And as more people like Women in Film and Sundance Institute and people have really dug into the details, the nitty-gritty, like where does the pipeline start leaking for women, then, you know, scales fall off your eyes and you're like, wow, there are a lot of issues to tackle. Meryl Streep pointing out, you know, that the critics are mostly, you know, Rotten Tomatoes, it's way more men, 760 men. So even if you're thinking, what movie I'm going to go see this weekend, you'll look on there and you'll look at the ratings, and those are mostly judged overwhelmingly by men, what movies you should see. So it's all different levels of change that we need to affect. So I started speaking out, or, you know, other people did, and now there's just a lot of cool voices, and you guys all came here tonight, yeah. So, you know, we're trying to change things, you know, in the world.
So, you know, this audience is pretty clever. We have filmmakers, we have film lovers. What is one thing a filmmaker or one thing an audience member could do to help stop gender inequity in the film industry?
Well, one simple thing is support it with your money. Like if you see a movie directed by a woman, I think Equity is coming out soon, directed by a woman, starring women. You know, go see it, buy a ticket, so that actually another movie gets to be made, directed by a woman, that it can be economically feasible. If you can, mentor people. If you've got some big, any high rollers here with big bucks, finance a movie made by a woman. Who are the billionaires? Raise your hand.
Like, yeah. Put your hand up if you have a lot of money.
If you have a ton of money, come and see me after. No, okay. So there's ways like that. Also mentorships, you know, like we talked, everybody's talking about that. I think some people are here from different film programs, and, you know, how can we help support film schools and just supporting women and talking about it.
And locally, you know, we have Film Fatale here. We have WIFT in the audience, I believe. We have Women in View. So even thinking and doing research to figure out how you can, you know, educate, organize, mobilize. Because this is, it's true. It's like countless stories of people saying, oh, I just thought I wasn't good enough. And then you see these stats, and it's like, we have to do something now, because this is
We need
insane.
to change it, yeah.
I want us to have time before we go to the audience to talk about the project you did for Till It Happens to You, the Lady Gaga song. So it's a gut-wrenching rally cry. Building awareness and advocacy to stop sexual violence on campus. Not just stop sexual violence on campus, but stop the silencing of the universities and the administrators of these acts happening on campus. How did you get involved with this project?
My friend is a songwriter who wrote this song. Her name is Diane Warren. She wrote 2 songs for Miss You Already, my last film. And she said, hey, I wrote this song, and it's a very powerful documentary. Why don't you watch it, and let's try to get the word out even more than just with the documentary, because that takes an hour and a half to watch. What if we could make a, you know, like a 4-minute short film that people would see? And, you know, I thought it was a pretty cool idea, because, you know, we have gotten, whatever, 30 million viewers to see that. We've gotten colleges to change their policies. We've gotten rape crisis centers to double in volume of the calls. So just by being able to watch something which actually, you know, Lady Gaga sings the song in such an emotional way, it was very personal for her. She experienced sexual assault. I did. Almost everybody that worked on the video, every woman came up to me and told me something that had happened to them too, you know. So it's much more pervasive, I think, than even the statistics say, you know. And does that mean like every guy is, you know, evil? No. Maybe they don't even understand what's going on either. And so how can we promote more understanding and love out there so that this doesn't have to happen? And Gaga did this beautiful thing, you know, the song kind of starts out, and Diane too, as more like a victim, and then the character becomes a survivor, and then becomes an advocate and an activist by the end. And that's what we try to do in the video too, to take you through a whole feeling where by the end, by sharing your story, you gain strength from other people and community. So
we are going to show a clip from the short, And we chose the clip that goes from survivor to activist.
Oh, cool.
So if we could run the clip for Till It Happens to You.
You saw her performing on the Oscars, too.
Till it happens to you, you all know how I feel. Till you're at the end of your road. Till you're standing in my shoes. I don't wanna hear nothing from you, from you, from you. 'Cause you don't know. Till it happens to you, you don't know how I feel. How I feel. How I feel. Till it happens to you, you won't know. It won't be real. No, it won't be real. Won't know how it Till it happens to you, you all know how I feel.
Yeah, please applaud. This clip didn't have the statistic that we were just talking about, which is that it says that 1 in 5, this year 1 in 5 students will be sexually assaulted on campus if things don't change. And we were just talking about whether or not it's actually more than 1 out of 20 people, men and women. You spoke a little bit about the 3 parts. Why did you, or how did you choose the various stories that you wanted to pull through?
We did a lot of research, you know, watching the documentary, but also online with people telling their stories, and then tried to find 3 different stories. One is kind of a hate crime against a transgender girl. One is a friend that seems like a best friend that got drunk and kind of crossed the line. And then another one is a date rape, you know, roofie situation. That seemed to be some of the common stories that happened. So then we found people, a lot of wonderful actors that I work with at the Sundance Lab, and Nikki Reed, who also wrote 13 with me, is in the clip. And you know, we tried to humanize the men too, you know, because they weren't, some of them were unaware in a way. Sometimes we've heard those stories too of what damage, lifetime damage they caused by their careless, thoughtless, violent actions. Yeah.
So it's, to date, has over 33 million views. So this is incredible how you're using your creative power to create awareness and social action. If anyone hasn't seen the documentary The Hunting Grounds, definitely watch it. And also go to the website, It's On Us, to figure out all of the policies that are going on and educate yourself on this issue that Lady Gaga, Diane Warren, and Catherine Hardwicke have brought to our attention alongside the filmmakers. At this point, I think it's only fair that I open it up to the audience. The first 2 questions are now going to come from Film Fatale. I'm sorry, I realized I did that really quickly. Stage crew.
Did you guys see Lady Gaga's performance at the Oscars? Wasn't it incredible? Oh my God, it was so beautiful.
Incredibly moving. And now Emmy nominations?
I got an Emmy, so it's the first thing to get a Grammy, an Emmy, and an Oscar nomination. First song ever, which is pretty cool.
Yay. So I can't see where Film Fatale is, but do you have the microphone? No. Okay. If you could maybe put your hand up so they know who to go to.
My question is, how do you sustain your creative life in between projects?
That is a damn good question.
Annie helped me with that. We talked about it.
Oh, good. Okay. Because it is tough. You know, every filmmaker, even men and women, even successful filmmakers, there's still a gap between how can I get the financing for the next one? How can I get an actor to sign on to the next one? And it's like any art, you know, maybe there are other artists and musicians out here. You have to be self-starting. You have to be like generating your own energy in a way, like your own solar power. You know, how can I keep going in the face of, you know, not necessarily a lot of positivity all the time? I think Canada is kind of wonderful because the government actually does support the arts more than other governments. Ours absolutely doesn't support the arts in the U.S. But you know, how can you find something that you believe in enough that keeps you going even when nobody else is telling you that it's a good idea? Like everybody said no to 13. You know, we don't want to finance it, we don't want to make it, but like I just believed in it enough that I just kept fighting and everything I could. And that's difficult. That hasn't worked every time, you know, like other projects that I believe in. The magic doesn't come together. I can't get the right person. So how do you not give up? You know, that's a good question. Well, part of it is having support like we have right here. You hear stories of other people that tried 5 times. I went and saw the Stanley Kubrick exhibit they had at LA County Museum, and Stanley Kubrick, you know, director of Space, you know, 2001 and all kinds of great movies. There were 3 rooms filled with projects that he never got made. Napoleon and 3 other projects that he had worked years on. And in a weird way, that made me feel a lot better. Like, even Stanley Kubrick couldn't get all his projects made. Yeah. I don't feel quite so bad. You know?
It's true.
So having, you know, friends that you can talk to about making small projects, short films. Like for me, that was exciting to make that short film, you know, even though I didn't get to make a feature in those months. Even anything, you know, a short film, anything, a documentary, keep making stuff, keep trying to do stuff and trying to finish something, you know, and make a short film and show it to people and get a criticism and try to make it better, make the next one better. Keep doing it.
Thank
you. I guess this sort of leads out from that question too about taking risks. Obviously, you've done a lot throughout your career and it's been an interesting trajectory. So how important has taking risks been creatively and otherwise, and how do you work that too on bigger scale productions where you still want to push yourself creatively?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for example, 13, okay, who else wrote a screenplay with a 13-year-old girl and put her in the movie? She hadn't acted before, but I didn't do it in a cavalier way. I took a calculated risk. We worked hard on the script, and then from the moment we finished the script, I paid out of my pocket for Nikki to go to acting classes, and then every weekend I worked with her as an actor, you know, until I could show the financier that she was capable of doing it, you know. So, like, I risked it, but I still tried to work hard and do all my tons of homework to ensure that there was the best chance I could to make it successful. And how do we keep risking? Oh, okay, unknown actors in Twilight, you know, at the same time that they wanted you know, big stars to play all the roles. Okay, I'll go meet with the stars, but then I would meet with more unknown actors and, you know, do a cool audition with that person and have it in the back pocket. So if big star number 7 didn't say yes, well, how about this cool person? And work with that person over and over. Mostly at auditions, people would come to my house. It's well known. I think you can still go online and see it. MTV came and filmed the places in my house where Robert and Kristen met for the first time, and did the kissing scene on my bed. You know, 'cause I wanted to be more comfortable and casual, not like a sterile environment for an audition. And Nikki Reed and Evan Rachel Wood met and did their kissing scene on the same bed for the first time. So it's got some good chemistry.
Did you ever worry that Twihards were going to try to find your house?
Well, you know, they'd probably rather find Rob Pattinson's house.
That's
yeah.
You're smart. That's a good point. Now we have a question from the Next Wave committee. I believe there's someone who has a question. If they do, put your hand up so we know where to put the mic. There we go. If you can introduce yourself.
My name's Dasla. I'm a member of the TIFF Next Wave Committee, a high school group at TIFF. So yeah, I just want to say you seem amazingly, phenomenally genuine, which is so awesome. My question is, working on a specific project as a filmmaker, what was the biggest challenge you had to overcome, and what was the most rewarding part about overcoming it?
Which project?
Any project.
Any project.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's a pretty tough question. Well, every project had so many challenges. I mean, 13, just to get the money together, to get, these underage kids to, their parents to say yes, and to be there on the set with them and accept, that this was an important story to tell, for people to feel comfortable enough in the scenes that were intense scenes to create an atmosphere that people felt safe being vulnerable. Like, all those things are pretty challenging. And then, like on Twilight, there would be a whole other challenge, weather. Like, if it's sunny, Rob has to sparkle. We can't afford it. If it's rainy, then makeup runs and it doesn't really look good and everybody's all wet and drippy. So the only situation we could have was clouds. And if it wasn't cloudy, then what do? We did cloud dances, we did rain dances, we did praying to the gods, everything. And we had to have like 50 kinds of cover sets. Okay, if it is sunny, then I'm going to build a little cave here and, have them do a tiny little scene in a cave, which is in the movie. If it's rainy, I'm going to do this. I have to have the bedroom next to the baseball field so that if we can't shoot the baseball field, we'll run and shoot the bedroom scene. So you had to have 50 plans to solve every problem, like, all the time. And then when the set literally, when it was just a full-on downpour, okay, one day there's a beach scene in Twilight where we go to the beach and Bella hangs out with Jacob, right? And they talk about vampires. Okay, Rob's not in the scene. I'm like, yay, no vampires are in the scene, so it doesn't matter. It can be sunny. It can be a beautiful day at the beach, and I can shoot no matter what the weather. Turns into a monsoon, like a gale force storm on the Oregon coast, that the rain was coming in at a vertical thing, and it ruined 2 Steadicams, monitors, and everything. I'm like, guys, we can't keep filming. We've got to stop. And like this, we have to admit this is a weather day, an insurance day. Producer goes, nope, you've got to keep filming. And I'm like, how can I? And then you're trying to figure out a solution. Okay, instead of doing the next scene on the beach, I said, maybe I can do it up above and I can get like 3 surf vans together to form a circle around the actors to protect them from the wind. While I'm saying this, the lunch tent blew away. I'm like, okay, cool. So I go up to these surfers, like, can I use your car? And this scene is in the movie. If you've seen Twilight, Bella's sitting in a van, because it was a storm outside, And of course, this is the day that they'd somehow thought, because it's going to be such a pretty sunny day, they would fly, all the reporters that wanted to, and Stephanie and her children, her little boys, decide to come visit the set because it's going to be pretty. And so as the lunch tent blew away, and I'm like, everybody's like walking off the set saying, I quit, I'm not shooting. Right then the reporter comes up to me, hey, is it fun doing Twilight? I was like, hey! So there's all those challenges like every day. Did that answer the question?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
Wow. Not for the faint of heart. So now we're opening it up to anyone who has a question. Put your hand up, and
regular
we'll get
people.
The microphone to you. Everyone.
Yes.
So I was just curious, because you have an experience that not many directors have, which is that you've been on other directors' sets.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering what you learned or took from that for your...
Well, that was really cool for me because since I was a production designer on 20 movies and other TV shows and music videos, I would just have my eyes open. What is that director doing? What I would be reading every weekend, about directing and watching them behind the scenes and trying to learn everything I could so that it could make sense with what I saw that director doing. Oh, I just learned this technique to work with actors. ooh, I just saw Cameron Crowe, how he worked with that actor, you know, in Vanilla Sky, how he helped Tom Cruise change the tone of that scene, playing music. Oh, I see what Richard Linklater said to that person who wanted to sit down in the seat for this scene. And then Richard would just go up, yeah, it's really working out great, but I just kind of imagine you might be sitting like this or something, but maybe it's a dumb idea. Then he'd walk away. Then the next shot, you'd see the actor. You know, they would try it out, you know. So I saw these cool, or what David O. Russell did, what other people did, and like just cataloging it all in my head, like, oh, that's a cool technique. That's a neat little thing, you know, to remember. If that doesn't work, you could try this, you know. So yes, I learned so much. And then I would just go up and ask them, you know, hey, you know, I want to try to direct something. They're like, you and everybody else on the fucking planet. I'll be like, okay, you know. So I realized that I had to prove it. Like, they were my friends, and I was really close with some of those guys, Richard and David especially, but they really didn't help me make my movie when I even asked, begged, be an executive producer, read my script, give me advice. Nobody helped us, man. And I realized you gotta just, you know, do it in a way. You can't really expect handouts and people just to hold your hand and say, we really want you to direct a movie. Nobody wanted me to direct 13. Nobody wanted the movie to even be made, you know, so nobody offered me that job, or it wasn't easy to get to make it. It wasn't easy for Rick to make his first movie, Slacker, for $7,000. It wasn't easy for David O. Russell to make his first movie for $70,000, Spanking the Monkey. If you kind of got to go through fire, and then maybe you deserve to direct. I don't know.
Are there other questions? This one right here.
Hello, I'm over here.
Oh, sorry.
Hi.
I forgot the glowing stick.
13 is one of my favorite films of all time, so I'm really
Thank
honored
you.
to meet you, and you're amazing. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes you love someone's work and you don't, you know, it's not always reciprocated by the person. You're even better than your movie. So since it's one of my favorite movies, I'm really curious what some of your favorite movies are.
Oh, well, like right before I was going to make 13, I tried to think what movie could it be like, or what inspired me, what would inspire me in the shooting style or whatever. So I looked at some people like Martin Scorsese's, you know, earliest movies, like Mean Streets, you know, where it's the two guys. And that was kind of one of my inspirations, you know, like the camera and the hand and the energy that he had. I didn't, like for that one, I didn't look at teen movies. I looked at, you know, more radical films, you know, and so I love, you know, of course, who doesn't love Scorsese film, you know, the obvious people that we love. And, you know, I'm very inspired by Richard Linklater. You know, he always does something creative and different every single movie, from animated movies to 12-year time-lapse movies. You know, he's David also, who I'm honored to work with, you know, has just David O. Russell creates so much energy, and like just even that clip of Three Kings, I was just remembering, holy shit, you know, I wanted to be right there. I want to see the whole movie. You know, it's fun, you know, high energy. So, I mean, there's so many great people out there, you know, I could probably just keep going on and on and on. Yeah.
Glowing stick says over
Glowing
here.
stick. I was just curious, what is it about a project that really makes you believe in it? Like, what is it about, you know, the diversity of some of the projects you've done in some ways, but what is it about a project that really makes you say, this sings to me and I have to do it? Or it's probably different. To each,
no, it's that's a challenging question because, like I was talking about, Stanley Kubrick had 3 projects that he loved so much, and then, you know, many of them, not all of them got made. I'm in the same case. I call them the ghost in the garage. Like, all these projects that spoke to me, and like I just loved them so much, and I went out and made these short films and storyboarded it, and there's like 3 right now that are in the same situation. And I love them, and I think they'd be the best movies in the world, but I haven't figured out the magic formula to get them made. So the ones that you've seen that I've made are the ones that somehow somebody wanted to give me the money for. They may not even be my favorite projects, but those are the ones that got made. But still, you have to care about them enough as a director, even if you've had like a year or two of discouragement. You couldn't get this made. You put your heart and soul into it. It was the best thing in the world. It almost got made. It almost got made. Then somebody offers you something that will get made, and you think, okay, can I love this? Can I make this my own enough? And some of that's by doing research, for me, visual research, meeting people, that are similar to the characters, meeting the real character it's based on, all the different things, like, can I fall in love with this enough to stick with it, put my heart and soul, not do anything else 24/7, and I mean that, 7 days a week when you're working on a movie. Can I love something enough to do that for 2 years or whatever? And you'll start to feel it in your gut, this is creeping me out. This is too violent. This doesn't feel right in this climate. It's putting violence out. I'm just thinking about a project right now, that this is going to get made, and it's got, a studio behind it. But do I want my name associated with that? Do I want, in this age of gun violence, to have a poster of a movie with a gun pointing at somebody's head, like the Matt Damon advertisement right now? Is that what we want to put in the world? So you're always like struggling with all the issues all the time. What can get made? What can get financed? It's just, scary. But it's mostly, can you love it enough? Can you find enough, in there that makes you care about it? I don't know if that makes sense.
Hi there. You mentioned, hi there.
Okay.
You mentioned Tank Girl earlier, which is a film that I'm quite fond of myself. And I was just curious about the production design on that, because it was, since it is based on a comic book and it was so kind of outlandish and that type of thing, how you approached that, and also if you got any sense, working under a female director, the kinds of challenges that she was going through during that process.
Yes, Rachel Talalay was the director of Tank Girl. She initiated that project, and that was such a creative project for me. Of course, I just went wild, let's admit it. If you see the thing, I just got to make so many crazy things, and tanks, and let's put a barbecue pit on the tank, and do this, and I go out to sheet metal junkyards and just found the craziest stuff, and painting it colors, and that was pure fun for me. And she encouraged creativity, on every level. And the comic book, Jamie Hewitt, very creative in the comic book. So, we found this abandoned copper mine, and then I would just go everywhere and just find, oh, here's a weird mine shaft. Could I turn that into this? Here's an old building called the Concentrator Building. Let me build the office right in the middle of that and paint this blue. That was one of the most creative projects I've, ever got to do. And Rachel had a lot of, battles on that, which maybe some people here might know more about them than me. Maybe somebody's read more about. But I think it was tough, and she was actually pregnant but didn't want to tell anybody because she thought she'd be fired, and then, all these kind of issues. So it was a good challenge. Maybe or somebody else knows more about it. But she was great and brave, and I think she's directing an episode of Sherlock. Yeah, the first woman to direct an episode of Sherlock. Pretty awesome, yeah.
So I think this question follows what you were just talking about, but at the beginning of the conversation, it was mentioned that there's only 4% of directors are women, and that there's obviously a lot of women in the crowd. Curious to get your perspective on the, what role you feel women have in directing, how female-directed films might be different, and if you're pitching against, let's say, 3 male directors or more, because if you're only 4%, there's more. It would be more male directors. But what would you say is your unique point of view, or why a film would be different if they chose you as a director?
Well, when I go into a pitch to get a job, if it's not a project that I've initiated, if it's something that's like an open directing assignment or a possible job, then I go in very prepared. I've tried to really analyze the script in detail, looking at its story structure and everything, and tried to have cohesive notes where I think the script could be improved. If it could be improved, I try to have a visual idea of how to do the film. Sometimes I also try to have a practical idea. Hey, we could film it here, we could do this. Here's where I could take something in the story and make it more cinematic or more dynamic than it is as a director. So I try to go in with, you know, extreme preparation. And actually that, you know, I think that's the class thing that I'm going to teach tomorrow or whatever is about fix it in prep, you know, in the morning or something, where I show a lot of the tools that I use for prepping a project. So I just try to go in there where they feel like, wow, she's already 5 steps ahead, where they want me to direct the film, if possible. That's not always going to be the case. I've found times that I've recently done all that kind of work, hired somebody to go shoot this for me in New York, all this stuff, and then by the time I got out of the meeting, I called back my agent. I'm like, I think it went pretty well. Oh, guess what? I didn't want to tell you, but they already offered it to this guy who's directed, you know, X number of big budget movies, and how can we fight that? You've directed 1 blockbuster, he's directed 5 or whatever. And it's true, every year, if 95% of the top 100 grossing movies are directed by men and 4 or 5% by women, that means there's 95 men every year that have something awesome on their resume, big box office results. So, you know, it is tough if people go for the old statement, we're hiring the best person for the job. And the best person is somebody that's had, you know, X number of box office hits. 96% of the time, that's going to be a guy. So those are all these challenges and perceptions that we're trying to break out of stereotype, trying to change, you know. It's tough. That was a bad answer, huh? Was that depressing? Let's go positive next time. Okay.
Me? Hi. Over here.
Oh, right in front of us.
Hi. So when I was in film school, I asked a female filmmaker who I admired if she had any advice for female filmmakers, and she responded with, I don't view myself as a female filmmaker. I view myself as a filmmaker. I was wondering if you could kind of maybe speak to that. How do you feel about kind of that mentality?
I think that a lot of people like to say that or think that, and I probably did too, or, you know, would maybe be offended in the past or something. Somebody said that to me. And then when I started really understanding the statistics and the real numbers and everything that we're up against and how they're not getting better, then I realized that it's just not working to just say, hey, I'm just going to go out and do it. And there's 4% of us that are going out and do it, that we do have to make some noise, you know, and that is how most movements have happened. Civil rights movement, people talked about it, you know, all kinds of things. People don't really want change to happen unless you actually do something about it. So right now there's people that are brave enough to, you know, speak up and say, let's try to change stuff. And I think that's important, and as more voices join it, it's more difficult for people to ignore. As more journalists are courageous enough to write about it and say, how come there's no movies the next 2 years being released by Fox or Paramount that are directed by a woman? Not even one is coming out. I went to a meeting at Fox, and they're embarrassed about that. That is shaming them, or, you know, but we don't want to shame necessarily. We want to inspire people or make them laugh about it by doing a Funny or Die video. I don't know if you guys have seen it about that. I'm in that one, you know, to make people laugh, Funny or Die. How do we get people to be excited about being on the right side of history instead of the wrong side of history? How do we get people to jump ahead instead of be behind, you know, and get people thrilled and embrace diversity and embrace, you know, gender and, you know, everything. So, you know, you can just say, I'm just going to lead by example. That has actually not really been working. It hasn't been moving the needle for the last 30 years. So now I think it's great that people are making some noise about it and still lead by doing. That's great too, you know.
Hi. I know that you said you wanted to have a positive answer, but
okay.
Something popped up in my mind when you were talking about pitching your ideas to people who then the job goes somewhere else. How often do you find your ideas appearing in somebody else's work? Like you've got to pitch a story, or you've gone to make suggested improvements. Somebody else gets the job, the improvements you suggested.
I don't even go see those movies if I didn't get them. So I don't know if they use my ideas or not.
Good answer.
I don't just have one idea. I've got a million ideas. You know, I wouldn't be that nervous about it. Like, you're lucky if any of them did get used, maybe. I don't know. I don't see those movies, so. They didn't want me, then I don't want them, motherfucker. Okay. Anyway.
We were wondering if that word was going to show up tonight. I'm glad it did. Any questions?
I'm not giving my dollars. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. We just have to get the mic to you.
Thank you for this. This is so fabulous and inspiring and energizing, even the negative stuff. Would it jinx any of your yet unmade projects? I mean, I'm stuck on these projects of yours that are there, kind of throbbing in your garage or wherever. That is there anything you would like to tell us a little about?
I think it's a little bit too painful. Yeah. Because I love all of them, and I keep trying to water them and putting them out in the sun and getting them to grow, and then, you know. So, but hopefully some of them will grow. I mean, there's many things that I'm working on right now, you know, development this stage and that stage. So, you know, fingers crossed. Hopefully you'll be hearing something cool popping out soon. Yeah.
So we have time for one more question, and I see the glowing stick.
I was just Googling Fix It and Prep. So you're teaching that in Toronto?
Yeah, it's tomorrow.
So
yeah.
Film Fatale is working on a workshop with Catherine tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Me too.
I don't know if anybody else can go, or was I not supposed to say anything? Yeah.
I'm sure it's limited space.
I'm doing it in Vancouver in a couple of weeks too. So. What? In the moss, yeah, in the moss. But if you love moss, you could go to that. Okay.
So we have a question that we ask filmmakers. We have an audience that loves to watch movies, that loves to read about films and projects. You mentioned some of the films, but if you were to teach a class on film history, or if you were to teach a master class on, you know, the history of cinema, are there any books or any films or even any paintings or portraits that you would say are essential to what you see as the history of the movies?
Okay, I'm going to be honest. I'm not the best, you know, historian. Like, I'm more random, like random things that I just fall in love with that and then go and watch all those movies, or art, you know, cool museum exhibits and artists and architects that I like. Also, when I actually work on my films, I don't, I know a lot of people do this and they make fantastic films, but it's just not my thing to go and try to watch every movie that was made like that and like take things from the other films. I just try to like get into it more myself on my own, like, what is this person about? What's this character? Can I go to your house for real and see where you live? Or another person like you, and just try to like make it more my own. So I don't think I better not teach a class in film history. That will suck. Yeah.
So why don't you name one of the architects that you find inspiring so that people can start snooping around and see some of the trajectory?
Like a dead one, Antonio Gaudí, okay, love him. A live one, yes, he's awesome. And then a live one, I love Bjarke Ingels right now. Do you guys know who he is? He actually spoke in Toronto like a couple months ago and did a really cool thing here. And he's building something here, and he's building all this cool stuff in New York right now, a Danish architect, and his books are fascinating. His TED Talks are radical, and I was working on a project with him too. So he's super cool. And of course, you know, Zaha Hadid, fabulous female architect who recently passed away, has done amazing, mind-blowing stuff. There's so many other great ones too. But yeah, like go and find your own passion, I think. You know, I think it's great to be in love with film and then also be in love with other disciplines, art, sculpture, music, you know, nature, moss, everything. No more of that joke, sorry. Okay.
Everyone, please join me in thanking our guest of honor, Catherine Hardwicke.
Thank you, guys. Yay. Thank you for being film supporters and supporting diversity and everything. We appreciate it. Yay. Thanks for showing up tonight.
So we're going to go off to the side.